Please rewind this cassette.
Hey guys, welcome to Box Office Addict 96, my weekly show where I look at the weekend box office and I sort of just talk about random stuff dealing with movies. Thanks for tuning in. I will be occasionally sipping some coffee as I just made my first cup of the day as I slept in today because I have a couple days off here after a very strenuous and stressful work week, well, work month, if I was going to put it in more realistic terms. It was the holidays, places are busy, but I've had a fun week so far, although the days are flying by as days that you're not at work usually do. Time never seems to be on your side when you want it to be. What a real bitch. This coffee's delicious, though. It's a caramel macchiato with some whipped cream on top. Yeah, I'm that kind of person. Deal with it. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about here. The film that I made the box office addict film of the week is the remake of the Grudge. So this is like our third Grudge movie because for some reason they're now trying to reboot franchises that were successful remakes of J-horror films. And The Grudge is one that I don't think was a good idea. This is really oversaturating the horror market right now and killing it. We saw over the last few years that horror films were blowing up again with huge hits like It and The Nun, of course, the Conjuring franchise, the Insidious franchise. All sorts of horror films had come out and done well. Annabelle, the sequels to Annabelle. But now recently they've been releasing shit like Black Christmas and this, and nobody wants to see these movies. They have horrible marketing and they're performing very poorly, and it's like the horror market's back in the 2000s again where it's getting oversaturated with this bullshit with these horrible movies. And it's really going to affect the indie horror film scene and even the mainstream one that was coming back. Like, of course this was fucking Sony. Also, I'm sorry if I have a little bit of a morning voice. That's just the way it is, bitches. Anyway, this just pisses me off. You know, we really were having that return with horror, and then Doctor Sleep didn't do that well. You know, even though it had a big budget, Mike Flanagan had all this hype coming off Hill House. It's just upsetting. I'm a horror fan, and I want the genre to be doing well, and I want it to be respected. And stuff like this is just it's just the worst of it. You know, nobody wanted this. The Grudge movie that they made years ago was fucking terrible too. It just ended up being a big hit, produced by Sam Raimi. I mean, when are we gonna get the next one? Are we gonna get The Ring again? In fact, I think a few years ago they came out with Rings, didn't they? Jesus Christ. Before we get to the box office of The Grudge, though, let's catch up on some other movies and then we'll wrap up back around on this. So, 1917 is coming off the Golden Globe win for Best Picture and Best Director, which was an unexpected win. It made 617,000 at 11 theaters. It's at 2.3 million. The question is raised as how much of a boost does this help this movie going into its wide release here soon? It is one of the better reviewed films of the year. Sam Mendes is a big name director, believe it or not. People still remember American Beauty and Road to Perdition, and this is the guy who directed Skyfall. They use that in the marketing. They have the gimmick to advertise on that it's all looks like one shot by Roger Deakins, which has helped some other movies in the past. This is an expensive movie. This movie did cost $90 million, but Dunkirk, which took place in World War II, but is a similar film to this in a lot of ways, made over $500 million worldwide. So I guess the hope for this film is over 100 mil domestic. I don't think they could ask for much more than that. And 350 to $400 million worldwide to be considered a success, which I think is certainly possible. I do think this is going to perform well internationally. But so far, it's still very limited. Jojo Rabbit is pretty much done at 21 mil domestic. I think 22, 23 is where it's going to end up. I don't think that film became nearly as successful as they were hoping, especially with the early positive reviews and the nominations. There's that Black Christmas, $10 million. Yeah. Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix coming off his win for Joker is, let's see where Joker's at worldwide. 1,066,000,000. So Joker's pretty much done too. I thought maybe it might make 1 billion, 80 million if it kept going, but it seems like it's over. A Hidden Life from Terrence Malick, one of his better reviewed films in recent years, has so far made 1.2 million worldwide. I mean, it's doing better than some of his other films. I think he had some other films that didn't even make like $2 million in recent years. He's really fucking fallen off. Like, I've had issues with him for a while, but his last several films have all been terrible. I mean, dude, write a screenplay. Just get a good story and shoot it, make it 90 minutes long, and you might have a half decent movie. You know how to make a movie. I don't know what the hell you're doing. Do we need another 3-hour film where it's people doing voiceover and just quoting poetry or talking about Jesus? I mean, really, dude. Come on. Parasite made 838,000. Is at 130 million worldwide. Parasite keeps going. Like, just when you think the movie's done and it's about to wrap up, it makes a few more million. So Parasite is definitely a hit. We're going to see how it does at the Oscars with its nominations coming in soon. I'm assuming Best Picture, Director, Cinematography, Editing, Screenplay are all in the air right now to happen. So, Queen and Slim is just about done with its run at 42 million. The film did fairly well. I'm assuming the film's budget was like around 20 million, so it's definitely not a bomb, but it didn't catch on either. Speaking of stuff that didn't really catch on, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, a movie I like quite a bit. It's just scratching to get to $60 million with its $25 million budget. This is a very well reviewed film. It's got Tom Hanks in it. I would have thought this had done better. It did hold well, but everything kind of held well because, once again, this was the holiday boost that was benefiting every movie. Look at some of these holds. Ford v Ferrari, 5% drop. You're not going to be seeing drops like that in the next few weeks. Still, it's pretty good for Ford v Ferrari because now it's at 110 mil domestic, which is more than it looked like it was going to end up with, and it's at 206 million worldwide. I would say 250 million worldwide is where this really needed to get to be considered a break-even point because of the budget of 97 million, and it looks like it's struggling to get there. I'm really worried about this movie. Once again, this Oscar hopeful seemed to have lost some momentum. Like, is Christian Bale even going to get nominated? Is James Mangold going to get nominated as the screenplay? When this first came out, this seemed like especially when it opened well, this was going to be a big Oscar movie. And it seems like its hype has died down for some reason. Even though, it still did fairly well. Hopefully this can hold decent over the next couple weeks and make like 115 mil domestic. And let's hope that foreign total goes up, because that's really where it's hurting right now. It did fine domestically. You can't expect much more than that. Cats continues to be a disaster, 45% drop. It's at 25 mil domestic and 54 million worldwide. It looks like $100 million worldwide is not happening. And of course, this is on a budget of 95 million. There's estimates that this film is going to lose 70 to 80 million dollars for the studio. So big hit for Universal. Well, not a big hit, but a hit to their wallets, I suppose. Bombshell has made 24 mil domestic. A lot of people thought this film was going to be a huge hit. And I get it. You have these three actresses, what it's about. Very topical film, but okay, Uncut Gems from the Safdie brothers. All right, I'll be doing a review of this movie here in the next day or two. I just saw this a few days ago. I was incredibly drunk during it. I went out drinking, bar hopping with some friends, and then we went into the theater, and then I was like, oh my god, this is not a movie to watch drunk. That's my advice. Do not watch Safdie brothers movies while drunk. It was a tough set just because I was so fucked up. I didn't know how much of it was the movie or it was me. And then when I came out, I saw everything through the eyes of the movie. I went to a gas station to get pizza from these two guys who didn't understand what I was saying. And it looked like a scene from Good Time or something. And it became very uncomfortable. And I felt like something was about to happen. And then my buddy came in and handed me a Red Bull. And I'm like, do I want a fucking Red Bull? This might be a bad idea. And then one of our party members was down puking in a bathroom somewhere. So we had to get a Phoenix down to revive them. A lot of shit was going on just to go see Uncut Gems. But it's doing well, despite that C cinema score or whatever. I guess internationally this is all on Netflix. It would have been cool if this got released on Netflix in the States, because Adam Sandler has that deal with them. But I get A24, what they've done for the Safdie brothers releasing this domestically. And it's going to end up, as of right now, it looks like the biggest hit domestically for A24. Because this hold of 21% puts it at $36 million domestically. It should be at 37 now. It is. So it looks like if it can keep this pace up, it'll reach 55 mil domestic, which will put it ahead of Lady Bird, which was their current #1 film, which I believe made 49 mil domestic. And then there's like Hereditary and Moonlight. So overall, this film was a big success. Very critically acclaimed, should be big on Netflix around the world. And I'm assuming the budget wasn't much more than $20 million, maybe even less than that. So I'd say 55 mil domestic is a success overall. It is unfortunate. It feels like this isn't going to be getting many Oscar nominations, you know? You would think that like cinematography, screenplay, editing, sound mixing, and performance, lead actor Adam Sandler, you think all of those would have been nominations, but I'm getting a vibe big time that Adam Sandler is getting no nomination. I'm getting the vibe that the Safdies aren't going to get any nominations. I think they have to just look for technical noms. I think they got to shoot for cinematography or sound mixing, which the sound mixing is one of the best parts of it, and maybe score. This is out of the Oscar race, and I guess maybe it's because it's too edgy. I'm not really sure, but hey, it's doing well. Hopefully, this puts the Safdies to a higher place within Hollywood. They're doing a 48 Hours movie. Hopefully, that turns into a big hit, and then they'll be in the mainstream, and hopefully, they can flex their muscles to different things, because I am feeling a sense of them repeating themselves, and I don't like that. I want them to do something new. And I don't know if a cop, buddy cop, gritty New York movie is that new. Knives Out, 8.9 million. Knives Out is just a full-blown hit at this point. The movie keeps doing better and better as time goes on. You know, it was overperforming and doing really well initially when it opened as well as it did, and then it held really well during the holidays, but it seemed like it was getting ready to wrap up, and then it just keeps holding and doing well. Now it's at 130 mil domestic, like what the fuck, and $248 million worldwide. At this point, this film should be able to pass Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This should be able to make 145 to 150 mil domestic, and 300 million worldwide is not out of the question. And when I mean pass Once Upon a Time, I mean domestically. I don't think internationally it will pass it. But yeah, with the $40 million budget, it's a lot cheaper than that film. And the reviews, I mean, I'd say Rian Johnson has a good shot at an original screenplay nomination, a set design nomination, possibly costume design. I don't think they're going to get like best picture and all that. I don't think that. I think there's too much competition with other movies, but Rian Johnson will get his first Oscar nomination, and this puts him to a new level, because Last Jedi, anyone would have come in and directed that, and that film would have made $1 billion. And Looper did fairly well, but this is a hit. It was really marketed and sold on his name and the cast. This shows that he does have a fan base, and people are really attracted to this movie. So Rian Johnson is, I think, much more of a mainstream Hollywood director right now because of this film, more so than I think Star Wars. I think Star Wars put him in a controversial light, if you will, where this is back to a positive light. It's like, hey, it's a Rian Johnson joint, and people are loving it. I don't love this movie, but, you know, and you've heard Blood Money talk about it, but hey, it's a hit. You can't deny a hit when a hit's happening. So there you go, Knives Out. Spies in Disguise is doing very mediocre, just considering it's an animated film to only be at 47 mil domestic. Animated films should be easily making over 100 million. It's at 90 million worldwide. I don't know what the fucking budget for this movie is. It's probably 70-80 million dollars. They're not going to take too big of a hit on this movie, but it's just Will Smith is not bouncing back. Aladdin was a fluke, in that sense, and then Gemini Man and this is not doing well. It's like, will you make a good fucking movie? I don't get Will Smith. Like, I get doing Aladdin because that's a hit no matter what you do, but why don't you work like, okay, yeah, you're gonna work with Ang Lee, but make Gemini Man? Why didn't you make a family drama with Ang Lee, like The Ice Storm or Eat, Drink, Man, Woman or The Wedding Banquet? You guys could have made that shit for like $15 million and got rave reviews. Why don't you work with David Fincher? Why don't you work with Christopher Nolan? Why aren't you the lead in Tenet? You could get that role. Like, that's what I'm saying for Will Smith. Like, he's clearly talented and people still like him. He just, for some reason, is horrible at picking projects. If he just picked some like decent movies, a few decent movies in a row, I think he would be right back up there. It's not about making the movies that are going to be multiple $1 million hits, like $500 million movies. It's about making a film that has a modest budget, gets good reviews, and makes like $150 million. You still get your paycheck, you get your recognition back, but he's just gonna ride that wave of Aladdin and just keep making shitty movies. It's disappointing. I mean, I'm really getting frustrated with this guy. I think we've all given him too many chances. Let's talk about the grudge and the grudge that Sony has against me by releasing this bullshit. $11.4 million in 2,600 theaters. Now, of course, the budget of this film is only $10 million, but still, to open at $11 million, this is going to scratch to what, 25 mil domestic? So this is going to have to entirely lean on international numbers to make any major profits. And I think at the best they could look at is maybe 50, 60 million worldwide. And that's a really positive outlook. Fuck this movie. Fuck its marketing. Fuck the people who made this movie. Fuck its 94-minute runtime. Fuck its January 3rd, 2020 release date. Fuck its 2,642 theaters that it was released in. And fuck Sony. All right? I know I'm going all Edward Norton 25th hour on your asses here, but this is bullshit. What a horrible time to release this too with these other movies out. This is a film you don't greenlight even for $10 million. This is not a film you make. Instead, give that $10 million to another filmmaker who has an original idea for a horror film. Let's say like something like when The Witch came out or It Follows, even though those weren't big hits, and you take the risk on that and see what happens. Because occasionally it works out. That's how it was with Insidious. They gave James Wan like $2 million, and then it was an $100 million hit. You don't do The Grudge again. Like, this is obvious. This should not be told to you. You should know these things by now. Frozen 2, Electric Boogaloo, $11.8 million, 29% drop, 450 mil domestic, motherfuckers. Frozen 2 has now officially become the highest grossing animated film of all time, if you don't count Jon Favreau's The Lion King, which is technically an animated film, but you know what I mean, more traditional animation, not realistic animation. So this just puts the Frozen franchise in a fucking place of its own. This, in my eyes now, I mean, I hate to say this, because I really hate to fucking say this, this puts it like in a different place than Toy Story or other franchise. Now, Toy Story has the critical acclaim going for it. With Toy Story, you have 4 movies that are all critically acclaimed, and Toy Story itself is considered one of the greatest films of all time. The original is one of the best reviewed films of all time and one of the most innovative films of all time. So the Frozen franchise doesn't have that. But if we're just going off box office, right, this isn't like The Incredibles 1 and 2. This isn't like, this is unprecedented stuff where the first movie makes $1.2 billion and becomes the highest grossing animated film worldwide. Not domestically, either film. The Incredibles actually did better domestically than both of these. But this is such a huge international franchise, and the merchandising for Frozen has been gigantic over the last several years, and the songs have been huge. Now, this did not get the acclaim of the first film, but still, it performed what it needed to. It's past the first film. Domestically, it's 51 million ahead of that film. Internationally, it's made 75 million more than the other film. So here we are with 1.3 billion, and it looks like 1.4 billion is an absolute certainty at this point. And this is a film that costs anywhere from 150 million to 180 million dollars. So this is one of Disney's biggest hits right there with Endgame. I think this is going to have a higher net profit than The Lion King because it didn't cost as much, and of Rise of the Skywalker. So as of right now, this looks like the second most profitable film of the year. Well, maybe The Joker, just because the Joker's budget was 80 million or something. They said 55 million, but I heard later that the budget was more like 70, 80 million, but still. But yeah, the Frozen franchise, like, you can't deny its power at the box office and its power with audiences. Guaranteed the next film is going to make at least 1.2 billion, 1.1 billion. So they know now every time they release one, not only is it going to make $1 billion, it's going to make over that. And who knows, Frozen 3 might be able to even make more than this one. Last time I saw something like this was like when the Shrek franchise was at its peak, like with Shrek 2, and then when Shrek 3 had hype initially, where, yeah, it just seemed like, wow, this is just such a big... And they waited a long time to make Frozen 2. And they didn't really lose any of their audience. Like, what the fuck? All right, let's talk about Little Women, and I want to talk about a YouTube video that I saw recently for a YouTuber named Yellow something, who made a video that blamed men for the film doing badly. So, if some of you know the video I'm talking about, you can find and put it in the comment section, because I have umbrage with this. I want to talk shit. I'm really getting annoyed with these YouTube channels that use political content to get clicks, that try to talk about the box office when they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm really getting sick of it. You see this all the time. They'll claim that a movie's a bomb when it's not. They'll claim that it's a political thing and the movie's not going to do well, then it does well. This happened with Captain Marvel. All sorts of people made videos about Captain Marvel's going to underperform because of Brie Larson and all that. And then the movie makes 1.1 billion. Now, in the case of Ghostbusters, that was 100% true, but that was like that one time, or Charlie's Angels, so those are little victories. But they do it with every movie, and they always try to do this. And there was so many videos I saw about this where Greta Gerwig and the studio blames men for Little Women being a bomb, and they kept emphasizing that the opening day was $6 million. That was what the whole video was about. The opening day was $6 million. This film was a bomb. 70% of the audience who saw it was male, which is true. This was, female. The majority of the people who went to go see this movie were women. Right? That was the thing. It was overwhelming. Here's the thing, though. The $6 million day that video kept focusing on and acting like this movie was a disaster is so disingenuous, because this opened on a 5-day stretch over the holiday. And that $6 million was just its Friday. The film made $16 million over its 3-day opening and $29 million over its 5-day opening. That was the key there, $29 million over the 5-day opening. The budget was $40 million. So that was a good opening. I would say it even overperformed or did on par with what we thought. Now here we are with an 18% drop, which is a great hold, and $13.6 million. Now the film's at $60 million domestic. As I said for weeks before it came out, Little Women was going to do well, and it is doing well. And I see all these comments on that video being like, oh yeah, they blame men, and then nobody goes to see their movie. I didn't even know this movie was coming out. Oh my god, look, they're doing Little Women again? Oh, I'm so annoyed with these actresses. Oh, Emma Watson's in it. She's a feminazi. And don't get me wrong, I dislike a lot of that stuff too. But you have to be intellectually honest with these things. The film's at $81 million worldwide. It costs $40 million. It's at $61 million domestic. It looks like $85 to $100 million is pretty much locked up at this point. I think it's got a great shot at $100 million. And I think internationally it could make anywhere from $50 million to more than that. This could be a $200 million movie worldwide, or at least $150, $165 million movie. And when you consider the budget and everything, yeah, it's not going to be a huge hit, but they're going to make a profit, and it's critically acclaimed, and it's going to get a bunch of Oscar nominations. So quit making these videos so rapidly to attack these films that you haven't even seen, and to comment on them and call them bombs, and say that it's because men don't want to go see it when the film's clearly not a bomb. There's a lot of movies that just women go to see predominantly, and there's a lot of films that men just go to see that do well all the time in different genres. This isn't some freak occurrence that just happened with this movie. So yeah, this is a positive release for Sony. Because yeah, of course this is doing well. Little Women's very popular. Jumanji, The Next Level, 26 million, 25% drop, great hold. Jumanji 2 is blowing the fuck up right now. I really underestimated this film because it didn't open. I mean, it opened well, but the second weekend wasn't great. But here it is now, 237 mil domestic, $300 million domestic. Seems like it's happening. I still don't think it'll reach the 400 million, obviously, that the previous one made. 613 million worldwide. $125 million budget. Will it reach the $962 million of the last film? Probably not, but it's going to reach $700 million. It could even reach $750 million, to be honest. So this film's a certifiable hit at this point. It performed exactly like it needed to. They can make another film in this franchise. You just can't, The Rock and Kevin Hart, and that there's just too much box office draw with these stars, and Jack Black being in there too. And I'd say this is the franchise for all of them right now that keeps them in the A-list. Even though all of them could go do solo movies that perform well, And of course, The Rock was in the Fast and the Furious franchise. This is their own thing. They're the leads of this. You don't have to share this with Vin Diesel. And even if the next film only makes like 500 million worldwide, it's still a success. So, yeah, I was really underestimating that movie, and it's performing better and better as time goes on. Clearly, it does have good word of mouth. Okay, Rise of the Skywalker had a steeper drop this weekend of 52%, but it's still doing well overall. It's at $454 million domestic. And that international number, I will say, is not great, although I don't think it's opened everywhere. So it's at 927 million worldwide. It's still got a ways to go if it wants to reach the 1.3 million of The Last Jedi. And I still think it has a ways to go to reach that 620 million domestic. It looked like last week and what it's told it might get there, but it's guaranteed 500 mil domestic. It should probably be able to pass The Last Jedi domestically. Worldwide, I don't know. Worldwide, this might top out at like a 1.2 billion or right around 1.3 billion. I don't think it'll reach 1.5 billion. And I don't think it'll be, I don't know. I just don't think it's definitely not going to be The Force Awakens or anything like that. And I don't think it's going to pass Frozen worldwide. But domestically, this film's doing really well. That's the thing you have to say about this new franchise, is Star Wars still has a lot of steam domestically, at least with this franchise. Because, yeah, sure, The Force Awakens made $936 million. And sure, the last film made $300 million less than that. But this film right here, you can't, every time a movie comes out, it makes over 500 mil domestic. This is what I would argue for the Avatar sequels. Because when a film does so well domestically and so many people have seen it, you have enough of an audience built in. Because everyone thinks the Avatar sequels are going to be a disaster. I don't think they're going to do the numbers of the first Avatar, but they don't need to. That's the thing. They don't need to make, $2.7 billion worldwide. Let's say if Avatar 2 just makes 400 mil domestic and then a billion international, let's say it makes 1.5 billion worldwide, and then the next Avatar film makes like 1.3 billion, and then the one after that just makes that's not going to be a disaster. It might be an underperformance, but it'll be like the Hobbit trilogy, where each one made about a billion. I think people are really undervaluing the international box office of the Avatar sequels. I think it plays well internationally more so than it does domestically. I don't think it needs to make 800 mil domestic. But I think because how successful Avatar 1 is, at least the sequels guarantee 350, 400 mil domestic. But the international numbers could blow up. Avatar 2 could seriously be a huge hit internationally, and that's what people keep underrating when they talk about it. They're just thinking about it in domestic terms. But with the Star Wars franchise, there's a lot of discussion, does it still have life in it? And I say with numbers like this, yes. You just need to have something different and go to a lower budget. I think if they made like $150 million Star Wars film, and they budgeted it, they marketed it right and had a good story, I think you could have these kind of numbers. I think you could have a film that makes 450 million. Look at Rogue One and how it did. And I think you could have a film that makes $1 billion worldwide and it's a success. More Rogue Ones from a financial standpoint, not necessarily an artistic one. And less of this, because this is a very expensive movie. This is like a $300 million movie. So you're just eating away at that profit that you're making off the goodwill towards the franchise. I don't think there's much else to talk about here. I think we covered most of it. So what's the story of the week? Well, The Grudge did not do well. Cats continues to be a catastrophe. Knives Out is overperforming week to week. 1917 is getting warmed up for a wide release. Uncut Gems is on its way to be A24's most successful release at the domestic box office. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood continues to be a slight disappointment despite its positive reception. And of course, Frozen 2 has now become the highest grossing animated film of all time. And Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker continues to do decent box office, but nothing above what was expected. And then you have movies like Spies in Disguise and Bombshell that fall somewhere in the middle. So I would say the real winner of the weekend is Frozen 2 and Uncut Gems for A24 and Knives Out for Lionsgate. And Lionsgate really needed this hit. So yeah, those are the stories of the week. And The Grudge is not doing that great because, of course, it's not doing that great. I will see you guys for Box Office Addict 97 next week, where we'll be talking about hopefully some new releases that are worth discussing. We're kind of in that period right now at the beginning of the year where we have to just keep talking about the same movies until the new releases start to really hit, around February and March nowadays. It used to be that was the dumping ground, but that's not necessarily true anymore. But I'm very excited. We're only a few episodes away from 100, and look out for my review of Uncut Gems here in the next couple of days.